forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
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 Before we dig into this episode, let's take a look at another vintage Knight Rider commercial.
Michael and KITT are taking the night off.
We'll be back
so they can catch the 2-hour premiere of television's hottest new secret agents. Codename Foxfire.
Production 57323. Give me liberty or give me death. This episode was written by David Braff and directed by Bernard L. Kowalski. It originally aired Friday night, 9 p.m., January 21st, 1983. This episode was filmed December 23rd, 1982 through January 4th, 1983. It had the working title of The Great Race. This was the 14th episode aired and the 14th episode to be produced. Let's dig in. The episode starts with a vintage race, and in that race we see, I don't know, are these Formula One type cars? I'm not too familiar with this type of racing, but I think they're Formula One cars. And we see this one go into the wall here, and number 5, as we can see by the debris flying everywhere, and at CCA. So, I believe that this is actually footage from another movie. I don't think this is footage from an actual race, just because of the way it was filmed and the way the accident was filmed. I think this is from a movie. I have yet to determine what movie this would be from. So, in the comments below, maybe there's some race fans watching this that could give some clues, or at least some little breadcrumbs we could follow to try and figure this out. So we've got a Formula One type race car, number 5, wrecked. We see CCA on the wall. Is that a well-known track? I don't know. What does that stand for, CCA? And if we go back a couple slides, we see car number 8 racing. So if you have an idea, leave it in the comments below, and maybe in a future video, if we figure it out, we'll let you know. Michael, this is our first appearance of Michael and KITT driving at night to rendezvous with the semi, and KITT goes through all kinds of headlight configurations in this one scene. So it starts out, we see that just the regular Trans Am headlights and the scanner going. Then he decides to flick on the fog lights here, and then he drives forward a little bit further and he turns off the scanner. So there you go. But this actually, oddly enough, matches up with the next scene of KITT driving into the semi. This is what he has his headlights and fog lights on and no scanner. So oddly enough, and it probably wasn't planned knowing the continuity errors in the rest of the series, but oddly enough this actually all kind of works together. So then we see the semi here. This is the first time we see the semi at night, and if you watch this scene you can see the ramp is slowly descending as KITT pulls up. And this is the first time we see the ramp actually moving while the semi is in motion. So watch this scene, you'll see the rear semi door flap down while the truck's in motion. And there you can see it's come down even further. KITT's coming up for the approach. We've got it about even. And then it pulls forward. So one thing to note here, if you remember in our last episode when we covered Hearts of Stone, we talked about the semi's paint job and how that paint job was somewhat unique to Hearts of Stone. Well, we also see it sort of in Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. Let me back up a screen. So you can see that the trailer still has that striping that was introduced in Hearts of Stone. So it's a stripe So we've got this stripe going across here. It angles down, and then it just goes straight back. There's no angle back here. And the night shield was smaller. But take a look at this, and I don't know if you ever noticed this. In Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, at the beginning of the episode, we still see the same stripe paint job, but they painted over the shield. Crudely. It almost looks like they just took like a paintbrush and just painted black over it real quick, because you can still see the outline of it here. So they must have filmed this while they were in the transition of painting the trailer with its next configuration. So if we move forward here, we'll get to see that again in a minute, but take a look at this. This is something else interesting that happens right here. So we've got KITT coming up to approach, and watch this. So he's just about to hit the ramp, and look how close the nose is to the ramp. Now watch this. We're going to advance one. The nose is hitting the ramp right here. Now watch this. Look at that. The nose hits the ramp and bends the whole nose down. Now, because of this one scene, you know, we knew later on in the series, especially in the 4th season, they had rubber noses on some of the cars. But this scene proves that they actually had rubber noses pretty much from the very beginning. So we see the nose bend down here, and then still bent. You can see how stubby it looks right there. Then we move forward again, and look, all of a sudden the nose pops back out. So it cleared the ramp, and the nose pops back out into position. That's not going to happen with fiberglass. This is a rubber nose on one of the early cars. And you can even see, if you look real closely, there's like a little bit of debris from the, you know, the fling back of the nose, just all kinds of stuff right there. And then when the car pulls in, look at this. There's a giant crack in the rubber nose from where it bent down when they were pulling into the semi, and you can see the light of the fog lights coming through that crack. How about that? Crazy. And then we see the semi driving, and of course we have our mystery driver in here, obviously not RC3 yet, who would become the semi's driver later in the series, but here we just have some mystery driver. And now we're inside, obviously, and note again that this look kind of carries over from Hearts of Stone. You know, Michael's wearing this alternate leather jacket that he wore in the beginning of Hearts of Stone, and we'll see him in his regular leather jacket here shortly. But you know, still playing with the wardrobe and the outfits of the characters. Bonnie is you know, still in some color as opposed to a white jumpsuit. And here's a better look at Michael's jacket. You know, it's got this white piping and white around the zippers, and a look at Bonnie's jumpsuit. And we can see here, we mentioned this a couple episodes ago, this defect in the headliner here, which is going to become important for us to transition between the 1st and 2nd season as to what happened with this car. So you'll see that defect right there, and that stays with this car at least into 2nd season. Michael is en route to the Alternative 2000 race, and during that montage of him driving, we hear a voiceover of Devon giving him some instructions. And then during that montage, they zoom in here, as you can see, with Devon on the monitor. Did you ever notice how strange this is? Because normally when Devon is on the monitor, he's looking at the camera and he's addressing Michael. On this scene, he's looking off camera. The reason for that is, in the original version of the script, and even into the shooting version, this exchange between Michael and Devon actually took place at the Foundation in the office, and Michael was there. So Devon is actually looking at Michael, who is in the room, but between the time they filmed it and when they edited and put it together, they decided to make this scene be on the move. So that's why Devon is not looking at the camera here. Michael pulls in to the staging area of the Alternative 2000 race, and this is in reality Universal Studios back lot. And if it wasn't obvious enough, there's the Psycho House in the background. the same house that we will see up close in third season Halloween Night. And as far as I know, I believe this field is still open and undeveloped at Universal to this day. So here's our introduction of Liberty Cox, played by Robin Dearden. Robin appeared in a number of 80s TV shows. Magnum PI and Airwolf are two that come to mind. She's currently married to Bryan Cranston, obviously well-known actor for Malcolm in the Middle, Breaking Bad. She's been married to him since the 80s, and she and her husband Bryan actually met on an episode of Airwolf that she would do a couple years after this appearance. She played a hostage and he played the bad guy, and he held a gun to her head in the episode, and apparently that was love at first sight, and they've been together almost ever since, and they have a child together, and yeah. But take a look in the background, and this is the debut of the final version of the trailer. So we can see here we've got the angled up stripes in the back and the larger night shield, and this is the paint job that would continue through the semi throughout the rest of the series. So there you go. So you can clearly see the difference. They obviously wanted to make a bolder and bigger impact with that night shield rather than just the tiny one in the back corner. Michael and Liberty are heading into the driver's tent, and in the background here we see a car hauler. This is one of the Universal Studios car haulers that would haul Knight Rider cars or any other picture vehicles to the set. So there it is, making a cameo appearance. We see these haulers peppered throughout the series. You'll see them. There's a blue one, there's a couple white ones. And here is the debut of KITT's tinted windows. There's not an official button or anything for them, but this is the first time we see KITT actually tinting his windows because he didn't want Liberty to take a picture of the dashboard. And here's our debut of Dorothy Ackridge, played by Francine Lemby. She wasn't active in Hollywood for very long at all. In fact, this episode was filmed in late 1982. She had an appearance on Remington Steele, Falcon Crest, Cagney and Lacey, but then she left Hollywood in 1986. So her current whereabouts are kind of unknown. But the other thing to note is this Mustang that her character drives. This is the same Mustang that we see the main character in Street Hawk drive, believe it or not, a couple years after this. So this car was, reused beyond this, one appearance in the series and became a regular vehicle on Street Hawk. Well, regular for as long as that series lasted, which wasn't very long. And of course, we get the first look at the Prince brothers, General Lee here. I'm sorry, Dodge Charger. It's not the General Lee. A lot of people wonder, is this a screen use General Lee? And to be honest with you, I don't know 100% because, we're obviously focused on Knight Rider. We're not as in tune with the General Lee cars, but I know that I'm gonna butcher their last name because I think it's French, but the Valuset, I don't know. The brothers, they provided a lot of Army vehicles to Knight Rider for rental, and they provided the Juggernaut in the fourth season to Knight Rider and some other vehicles. And they were also, I believe, involved with Dukes of Hazzard and General Lee. So I wouldn't be surprised if they provided this Charger. Obviously, Knight Rider was going for a General Lee look-alike here. So, I wouldn't be surprised if those brothers provided this vehicle to Knight Rider and then it later became a General Lee. We just don't know. But maybe some of you Dukes fans out there know. If you do, leave it in the comments. Let us know. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this eventually became a screen-used General Lee. And then we have, speaking of the General Lee, we have the Prince brothers here, Sonny and Lester Prince. And obviously, they're made to kind of emulate Bo with his blonde hair and Luke with his dark hair here. And of course, in this, they're trying to do a parody of the Dukes of Hazzard, or a dig on it. So obviously, these two guys are alcoholics and kind of country bumpkins. But yeah, Sonny and Lester Prince. And Sonny, played by Richard Young here, he didn't have a ton of acting credits. He probably one of his biggest roles was at the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade as the guy that takes the cross from a young Indiana Jones, played by River Phoenix. So he has a short bit in that. And then Gary Houston Phillips, he had some part. He was in an episode of Riptide, and he had some parts in soap operas in the 80s, and then he kind of left acting in the early 90s as well. Here we have the start of the race. So let's go through these different vehicles according to what the announcer says, because this is an alternative fuel race. So according to both what the announcer says in the episode and looking at the script, because some of them are hard to hear. So we've got the General Lee, driven by Sonny and Lester Prince, that ran on moonshine. We have the Porsche, driven by Helmut Gross, and that's supposed to be an electric vehicle. Then we have this vehicle, driven by Hito Osaka, and it's propane powered. Moving to the back, we have the Mustang, driven by Dorothy Ackridge, and that's a solar-powered vehicle. Then we move to the Dune buggy, driven by Hashi Al-Qatar, and according to the announcer, which is really hard to hear, and the script, it's a multi-fuel vehicle. And then, of course, we have KITT running on the liquid hydrogen K2000 Special. And here we see, again, just like in Hearts of Stone, this is that fifth Trans Am that they got. So we're at 5 Trans Ams and a Flivver car, and you can see the shine of the leather PMDs. That's one of the ways that we can tell that this is that new 5th Trans Am. KITT also receives, not only do we see the debut of tinted windows, but we also see the debut of his infrared tracking scope, which is used quite a bit throughout the rest of the series. That was just installed in this episode. And here we have Dorothy's vehicle getting shot at, and so take a look at this. This is the scene where the tire explodes, and for some reason when the tire explodes, a giant chunk of paint comes off the side here, and we see the solar panel kind of pop up and flare off, but there's a better look at it. So you can see for some reason a giant piece of paint fell off even though it hit the tire, and then this solar panel, it almost looks like the solar panel originally went all the way back here, so I think the back piece broke off and flew away, and then this piece just kind of bent upwards. Of course, these are just styrofoam, so that were glued down. But then when we move forward, the next frame, it looks like that solar panel is completely gone and the damage to the fender is fixed. So there's your continuity errors again. And then we see this scene. This is where right as the Mustang is sliding out of control and we see it fall down over the cliff and the wheels start spinning. In reality, all they did was reverse the footage here, because this is before KITT saved her. KITT was still off a ways and monitoring this on his monitor. So if you look closely at the scene, even though the car is going backwards and skidding, you can actually see right here the grappling hook line that KITT shoots out to attach to the car and then pulls the car up. So another instance of KITT predicting the future, just like we talked about in Forget Me Not. This scene hasn't technically actually happened yet, so KITT's not even there to save him yet. There's his grappling line. And then, of course, KITT arrives, and mysteriously, suddenly, don't know how, a giant hole appears in the blackout, and this giant grappling hook just happens to appear. So that's great. And also, KITT doesn't have a license plate here. So there you go. And then he fires it, and it launches into the grille of the Mustang. And this isn't really an error, but let's be honest. If KITT's pulling just on this flimsy grate that isn't even attached at the top, there's no way it's going to pull the Mustang in. Moving on, we've got Michael in the backup to the hero car pulling Dorothy and the Mustang up over the cliff. And notice here that the wear to these cars is just continuing, as you'd imagine. And now we've got all of this black gaffer's tape that is just haphazardly taped from the Knight Rider dash to the stock Trans Am dash, and it's peeling up and it just looks terrible. And same with up here. They had a piece that was kind of covering the overhead, the headliner here, and that's all fallen down. So, just your normal wear and tear for the amount of abuse that these cars took. And then we move to Michael checking out the bullet and the damage to the car. And once again, the paint chip is no longer existent, and this whole solar panel has now been placed back on the car. And if you notice, there's no hole in the tire here, but then when we move forward, we see a giant hole for this tiny little bullet, and somehow he found it just lodged in here. Michael and Liberty. Michael goes to his room and Liberty is in there, and Michael says, "Hey, I got a race to run. I got to get some sleep." And she says, "What if I give you a reason to stay up?" And if you watch, this scene is also in the teaser for the episode at the very beginning. And if you watch, they're two different takes. You can tell by the expressions about how these two takes differ.
I gotta get some sleep. I'm running a race tomorrow.
What if I give you a reason to stay up?
I gotta get some sleep. I'm running a race tomorrow.
What if I give you a good reason to stay up?
So now we have an unknown assailant at this point in the story planting a bomb in the Prince brothers' General Lee Dodge Charger clone. But in reality, this is actually under the hood of one of the screen-used Knight Rider Trans Ams, believe it or not. So this is for those of you familiar with 1982 Firebirds and Trans Ams, this is the air cleaner, the factory air cleaner, factory everything. You can see the cowl here, which matches a Trans Am. And the only thing really not stock that you see here is this bundle of wires. And this bundle of wires is the power for fog lights and or the scanner. So they added this bundle and it ran over here across the passenger side into the front of the vehicle. But yeah, you're looking at a factory Trans Am, one of the screen used KITT's engine bays. And then the next, then there's a commercial break, and the next day, and we've got this scene where they're getting ready to race again. If you look in the top right corner, we see yet again another Universal Studios transportation truck, aka the Comtron trailer. And if we look here, we actually have some of the Knight Rider crew right here. This is H. John Penner, the director of photography, right there, sitting in his Knight Rider director's chair. And then we have the camera operator here and equipment. So this is all the Knight Rider crew making a cameo, believe it or not. And white wire, still covered. There you go. Michael, when the race starts, Michael's driving, and we get just another look at the 5th Trans Am. This was the one that would become the Season 3-4 hero car, but right now it's just a general purpose stunt car. And we get a better look here. You can clearly see those are leather seats. You can see the shine on them. There you go. And now we move to the interior of the Prince brothers with Liberty in there, and she's not really enjoying all of their advances. We've got here the slate board, the clapper board at the bottom of the screen for the scene. So they probably didn't mean to have it out in the open there, but there it is. And then we've got this view. I think they had 2 different chargers to use. They had one that was, I guess, the hero car, and then one that would eventually get partially blown up. So, and this is one of the 2. I think This is probably the one that gets blown up. And if you look closely, it looks like it has a plexiglass or acrylic front window. You can see some screw holes here where it's held down. And of course, we've got the one headlight door open and the plate here. And then, so see, if you look here, so we've got, we've got this dented grille, we've got one headlight open, and we've got this license plate, and then we move here, and no license plate. The grille looks a little bit better. The headlight door is closed. So clearly they did have two different chargers for these scenes. And of course, in the background here, this is the acrylic window jump car. And you can tell the back end's weighed down a little bit. So this is right before they're getting ready to do the jump. And, going back to the issue that they had throughout the first season of Michael just pressing the wrong buttons. So, a lot of times he'll press turbo boost and it'll be a burst of speed or different things like that. Here he pressed rocket fire and that causes him to turbo boost. So, whatever. And there's the launch. If you look very closely, you can just make out the ramp right there. And there's KITT flying. And what's neat is, so here's another angle. This is, again, the jump car. And right here we see some of the Knight Rider crew, the filming crew, off to the right here. Just kind of a blur with multiple cameras. And then more of the jump. This is kind of in slow motion now, so we get a good look underneath at the skid plate and whatnot. And then moving forward still, we've got something flying through the air here. I think it might just be a piece of the ramp, a wood piece of the ramp, I'm not sure. Clearly you can tell these are acrylic windows, front, side, rear. And then what's neat is, so KITT's in the middle of the jump, and then we cut to the interior shot of the Prince brothers and Liberty with their reaction. And see, they're all looking out the window to see KITT flying over them, but look real closely. KITT's actually still behind them. So they, another editing mistake. There's KITT right there coming up behind them. Yet maybe that's Carr. Maybe Carr came back right there. I don't know. But there they are reacting, and then my favorite scene. Just look at their faces. Look at that acting. They're both looking at the same thing. They're looking at something over here, but KITT's, behind them. So I don't know what's going on there. And then we have the hard landing here, and we'll look at it kind of frame by frame. So the car's landed, the front end is dragging, and then the back end hits, and just look at that. The whole rear end buckles and bends down, and then we've got this plexi window popping out, and it's just a mess. Now we know that they obviously kept repairing these cars even whenever normally they would be beyond repair, but there comes a point when the car is just too far gone to repair and they need another one. One of the debates that we have kind of internally is, was this a fatal blow for this car? And we think maybe it might have been. And we still see the acrylic window jump car in future episodes, but it's very possible that this is the end of this jump car, and they get a new one. Again, not 100% sure, but it certainly would warrant putting it out to pasture whenever you see damage like that. And then it bounces back up a little bit. We still see we've got the damage back here, but yeah, it's a mess. And then we switched back to the this fifth Trans Am, this stunt car that they just got in the previous episode, and the other General Lee here. I keep calling it a General Lee, but you guys know what I mean. And then yeah, we see this close up, and once again, clearly can see that these are leather seats and not fabric. So close up there as Liberty gets out, although that's not Liberty. And then KITT pulls away. And then we have the massive explosion. So they did, if you look here, they did actually blow up a Charger, at least somewhat. So you watch this, and there it is again. So after the initial explosion, there's a little bit more, and then it blows up again. And if you look at it, it almost looks like there's no engine in there, which I'm sure there is, but and the back end is smoking. And actually, if we go back to here, if we look, there's no license plate and that door's closed. So maybe they actually blew up this one and kept the other car that we saw with the headlight door open and the license plate. I don't know. But so the car's exploding, another huge explosion, clearly still a Charger, flames coming out underneath, another angle, still blowing up. Then Michael approaches it, and all of a sudden it's a, what is that, a Dodge Monaco? Which oddly enough is what they use for the police cars in Dukes of Hazzard. So somehow we went from that to that. I don't know why. If they weren't, I mean, clearly this car is already pretty damaged, but apparently they decided they needed to torch another one. So there you go. And then there's a commercial break, and we head back to the inside of the semi. And once again, we see we've got a wall missing here, and you're going to get a glimpse just barely of the actual stage 1 out there. But they had that removed for camera and filming purposes. And Bonnie here, while Michael and Devin are talking, Bonnie comes through and she's putting the T-tops back on. And we mentioned this, I think it was back in the pilot, but this is the hero car. You can see the Michael Chaffee overhead console, but you can see the tabs right here that what they did is they would put the T-tops on, and then these tabs would adhere to the glass of the T-tops. So any one time they wanted to do an auto roof, they could just tie a fishing line to the end and pull up on it and use this as the pivot point. So that's what those are right there. So jumping ahead with Michael saving Liberty from being blown up, we've got the backup to the hero car here, and we get probably one of our best looks at the seat, the early blind drive seat suit deal that they had. So you can see here, compared to a regular PMD seat, it's very square in shape, and this opening is square, and they just have this kind of large flap that goes over the top. And then we move here and we see the actual explosion. Still the backup to the hero car. A couple things to note. We've got the white letters of the Eagle GT tire showing on this front tire. If you look closely, we've got the fake dash with the stickers on it, no TVs, and a round steering wheel. And then there's something here. There's some kind of a flat metal piece. It almost looks like a blackout, the blackout for the rear of the car that's just laying up here. And as this explosion rocks the car, you can see this flap a little bit, but it almost looks like it's attached to the car. No clue what that is. So Michael and Liberty head back to apprehend Sellers and Shaw, and again, back up to the hero car, all this crazy gaff tape that's peeling off and looking terrible, and this ill-fitting squared off overhead console with peeling tape, just a bit of a mess. And then we move to the inside of this same car, and this is one of the rare times we see another angle of this fiberglass plug that they put in here. And it's more than just, it's more than just like this rectangular piece. Someone actually took the time and sculpted this, because if you look, I mean, it has some curves and some angles to it. So I would love to, it'd be great to be able to find this piece and actually see what it looked like. This one has never popped up in our travels before. And then of course you have Michael pressing fake buttons up here. You hear the button sounds, but he's just pressing that blank piece of fiberglass under here. So, but whatever, it's Hollywood magic. And then we have Sellers and Shaw, which we saw, we've seen them throughout the episode, obviously, but it's worth pointing out here that we've got Brett Halsey and Alan Fudge. Now, Alan here, he died in 2011, and both of these guys had a long and prolific career in Hollywood, and were involved in, most of the popular 80s shows that come to mind. So Brett is still alive, but he hasn't really acted since 2015. And we have KITT doing yet another jump in the episode, and if you take a close look, you can see one of the Trans Am air, the front fender extractors has blown off of the car during the impact of the ascent into the air. And then the episode ends with, I just like this scene. I like the expression on Devon's face. And, you know, whenever, at the end of this episode, whenever Michael realizes he has to return the trophy and Devon says, "Sic transit gloria mundi," I did some research to see what that phrase meant. And it's actually Latin for "thus passes worldly glory." So what he's saying is, this was your chance at fame, and now you have to give it all back. So I thought that was kind of a neat and fitting way to end it. But it took some work to pull that together. One last thing to mention, and I failed to mention it earlier in this episode, and that's just who recurred in another episode. So Robin Dearden, which we talked about earlier, of course, she returned to play Mel in the season 3 episode Buyout. And then we also have Kai Wolf, he played Helmut Gross in this episode and drove the electric Porsche. He returns as the main bad guy in Custom Killer with the sedan that changes colors and the grill that comes down and with spikes and all that stuff. So that should wrap it up.
And now, while we listen to Joe's selection of Knight Rider music that we received directly from Don Peake himself, we'd like to thank these Patreon supporters. Look at you guys scrolling up the screen to my right. Wait a minute, how can you tell which side is my right, since you can't see me because I'm not on camera? Oh well, you know what I mean. We're featuring these fine supporters at our Knight Rider Prop Restorer level. Thank you very much for your support. And for those of you at the Knight Rider History Hunter level, we're recognizing you right now in the description. Now, if you enjoyed seeing this golden nugget of Knight Rider history being rescued from obscurity, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support would empower us to bring you even more of these historical nuggets. We are the Knight Rider Historians. Till next time, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.